Let's talk about Salesforce Integration. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden language that lets all your different software systems actually talk to each other. We're talking about turning those isolated islands of data into one powerful connected stream of information.
All right, to get our heads around this, let's start with a really simple idea. Just picture a room with two of the world's top experts in their field. These two have all the answers, all the insights you could ever want. But here's the twist, and it's a big one. They don't speak the same language. So all of that incredible knowledge, all that potential, it's just trapped. They can't share ideas, they can't collaborate. They're basically working in their own little bubbles.
And you know what? That's exactly the problem most businesses face with their software every single day. Your CRM system is an expert on your customers, and your e-commerce platform is a genius when it comes to orders. But if they can't speak a common language, they're just brilliant, isolated experts.
So, this brings us to the core issue we're trying to solve here, and it has a name: data silos. This is what happens when your most important information gets locked away in separate, totally disconnected systems.
Just look at this. It lays out the problem perfectly. Over on the left, you've got all this rich customer data sitting in Salesforce. But on the right, their entire order history is stuck in a completely different system. The result? It's a mess, right? Your sales team has no idea what a customer has bought before, and your shipping team might be using contact info that's totally out of date. It's a recipe for confusion and, honestly, bad customer service.
So how do we fix this? How do we break down these walls? Well, we have to teach these systems a universal language. And in the software world, that language is built around something called APIs.
Okay, so what is an API? The fancy term is Application Programming Interface, but forget that for a second. The absolute best way to think about an API is like a waiter in a restaurant. You, the customer, don't need to know how the kitchen works. You just need to know how to talk to the waiter. And this analogy just illustrates it perfectly. You are the service consumer. Maybe you're an app that needs some information. You place your order. The waiter, that's our API, takes your request back to the kitchen, which is the service provider holding all the data. The kitchen cooks up the meal, and then the waiter, our API, brings that finished product, the data, right back to you. Simple, reliable, and standardized.
So how do you actually talk to the waiter? You use a set of standard commands. A GET request is basically you saying, "Hey, can I see the menu?" You're just asking to retrieve some data. POST is when you want to create something totally new, like placing an order. PUT is for updating something that already exists, like adding fries. And DELETE, well, that one's pretty obvious, right? It's for canceling your order. These simple verbs are the backbone of all API communication.
Now, obviously, you can't just barge into any restaurant kitchen and start demanding things. There are rules, there's security, and in the digital world, that is a huge deal. This brings us to what I like to call the digital passport, making sure everyone is who they say they are.
It all boils down to this one fundamental question. Before one system hands over its precious data to another, how does it know for sure that the request is legit and can be trusted?
Okay, so one of the most common ways to do this is with a simple API key. Seriously, just think of it like your library card. It proves you're a member of the library and you're allowed to check out books. It's great for identifying your app when you're just accessing public or semi-public information.
But what if you need more than just library access? For the really sensitive, important stuff, you need something way more robust. And that's where OAuth 2.0 comes in. This isn't a library card, it's a hotel key card. It's way more secure, it's issued specifically to you, it only opens your door, and it usually expires after you check out. It lets one system act on a user's behalf in another system without ever sharing the actual password. It is the gold standard.
All right, enough theory. Let's see how all of this actually comes together in the real world. We're going to follow the data on a couple of common integration journeys.
So for our first trip, we're going to do something pretty common, but super useful. We're going to watch as Salesforce reaches out to a totally separate external service, in this case, a recipe API called Spoonacular, to pull some helpful info right into our Salesforce org.
So here's how it plays out. First things first, inside Salesforce, you got to tell it who it's allowed to talk to. That's what remote site settings are for. It's like adding Spoonacular to a trusted friends list. Then, our Apex code makes a GET request, and it flashes its library card, that API key. Spoonacular sees the key, says, "Okay, you're good," and sends back the recipe data in a nice, structured format called JSON. Finally, our code reads that data and displays it right there on the screen in Salesforce. Pretty cool, right?
Okay,
Time to level up. For our second journey, we're going to tackle something a bit more complex and a lot more secure, connecting two completely different Salesforce orgs. This is something bigger companies need all the time, letting one system securely access and even create data in another. Now, this process is a lot more involved, but it's for a very good reason: security. The target system, let's call it Org B, creates something called a connected app. Think of this like setting up a bouncer at the door who has a very specific list of who's allowed in and what they're allowed to do. Then, in our main system, Org A, we set up an Auth Provider and a named credential. This is the magic part. It securely bundles the destination address and our hotel keycard, the OAuth details, all in one safe place. Now, our Apex code in Org A can securely call Org B to get or create records, and not a single password or secret key is ever exposed in the code.
Okay, so we've been deep in the weeds on how all this works. But the real question, the one that really matters, is why? Why should you go through all this trouble to connect your systems?
And let me tell you, the payoff is huge. When your systems finally start talking, you unlock that 360-degree customer view everyone's always talking about. This means you can automate powerful workflows and stop making your team waste time on manual data entry. You get a single source of truth, so sales, service, marketing, everyone is looking at the same up-to-the-minute info. And what does all that lead to? Faster, smarter decisions because you finally have the full story.
Which really leaves us with one final thought. One big question for you to take away. Your systems are just like those experts in the room, filled with incredibly valuable data. The question you have to ask yourself is, are they actually having the right conversations, or are they just sitting there speaking different languages?